Hey guys, welcome to this video. Thank you so much for tuning in and sharing in this now moment with myself and with one another. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome back. If you have, my intention is unity and oneness in the highest levels of love light. I want to talk today about empathy, and I want to talk about empaths. So let me rephrase that. More of the label of empaths versus empathy. I'm going to share a little bit about my journey because I've been doing a little bit more of that lately. I've been guided to. And then I want to share different layers. I might do this in several videos. I'm not sure. I might eventually do a course on this. Things are shifting for me as well as everybody else in my journey. But this is important because of what I've experienced, and I've been seeing this a lot in the lightworker community as well as just conversations and sessions with other light workers as well. And let's just talk briefly about, without going over what the definition of an empath or empathy is, most of us know that when we have empathy, we're feeling something. We have a feeling for something or somebody else, and their experience would be the easiest, most simple definition. And let me just back up and share what I'm about to go into in the layers is based on my own expression. It's based on my own journey, my own observation, and my own perspective based on all of that. So we are being guided to always use our own discernment when we're listening to somebody else. So I also share an energy and a feeling behind what it is that I'm sharing. Hopefully providing a space that others can just sit and relax into and not have to pick apart this. It's just an overall perspective. And I share that because we can sometimes get into judgment. Certain words will trigger certain judgments or preconceived notions or patterns that we have in our own journey. And being an empath is one of them. So I'm going to go into why and how that unfolded for me in a little bit. Sometimes we can really, so I'll give an example. Do you guys remember when they talked about the 13, and I'm not an astrologer, I don't know much about astrology. I do know some people that do though, so I'll have to share their link at some point. But I believe they talked like you might have been a Sagittarius at one time, but now you're part of the, is it Ophelius or Osophelius system? I'm butchering that and I apologize. But so people were like, I'm a Sagittarius. And then all of a sudden there was a whole group that said, no, you're not. By the way, it's transitioned into this. And I know that I was like right on the cusp, and it's like I was either Aquarius or Pisces. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not that, I'm this. And I really was attached to this concept of my sign, even though there's an aspect of me that knows that that's just a tiny piece of who I really am. I really enjoyed having that badge or having that label or having that like, I am Carrie, and this means fill in the blanks. I am Pisces, I am Aquarius, I am Sagittarius. And so I'm sharing that because we sometimes don't realize that that's something that we've really become proud of or that we now have made as our identity. And that's kind of part of where I'm going with in this video. So so I'll just back up for a moment. When I went through, I've always been, so I also associate myself with the label of an empath. However, what I'm about to share is my perspective of what that means for me and a little bit about my story. So for me, an empath is someone who feels the emotions and feelings of others, picks up on those emotions or vibrations or their environment. It can be through animals, it can be through people. And I just want to I'm going to get to some things that are very multidimensional about this in a minute. But if you guys have seen Guardians of the Galaxy and the number 2, which I love those movies, they're fantastic from my perspective. There's Mantis, and she can put her hand on people, and she's that little praying mantis character. And she's an empath, and she feels the emotions of others. Now, she has the ability to change the emotions of others in the movie, and we may get to that in another video. So I just want to back up for a moment, and that's her gift. So I first heard somebody say that years ago, and I was like, I'm an empath. And from that point forward, I found myself saying things like, I'm an empath. Well, that means I'm sensitive to everybody else's emotions. And I did go through a brief phase where I was really sensitive to other people's emotions. And I had been searching for the reason why. And when I heard somebody use that term, and I'm going to use it as a term, because what is a term? It's a category, it's a box, it's a word. And let's think of it, it's not infinite. It's a term, like termination. It's this. It is what it is, and here it is. And of course, we know as empaths that it's so much more than just that's what it is. There's all these things attached to it. However, I'm going to venture into some of the limitations that we can place on ourselves as associating ourselves with the term empath. So while I was going through this intense Kundalini experience and intense cleansing and purification because I had been so sick, my empathic abilities were through the roof. It felt like I was reading other people's thoughts and minds, but I wasn't. I was just feeling strongly into their emotions. So I was just open, and I would walk into a room and just feel if there was an argument, it was like, oh, I can't even be here. Now I'm going to go a little deeper into this because this is my story and it's no longer my story. But it was part of my experience. Because there comes a point, and I'm going to get to the basics, but I just want to start by opening up and sharing how I came to these conclusions or realizations, because they're not even conclusive, as everything is changing. So I would walk into, and I experienced this as a child as well. I've always been in tune with these feelings since I was a little girl. And my parents would be arguing, right? They argued a lot. And I would come home and I knew right away that they had been in an argument. We could say, oh, well, you could see that because of your mother's body language or your father's body language. I could walk into a room that they weren't even in and I could feel it. Okay? Many of us have that ability. And in fact, I would venture to say we all have that ability. And that's where I'm going to get to in just a moment. So that's my story. And I realized I'm an empath, and I would go then, well, what does that mean? Well, that means I'm a feeler and I can feel into everybody's stuff. So then I would start to play with that. And for a while, I became a little depressed because I couldn't be around negative people. I would pick up on it and literally take it with me. It would stick to me like glue, and I would feel yucky. And sometimes this would last for days. Or I would get angry. I wouldn't be able to control it. I would be around somebody else who was angry. I would pick up on their emotions, not realizing I was picking up on their emotions, and then I would become angry. And then I would walk away going, why did I just get so angry? This was the beginnings. And then I would feel sad and not know why I was feeling so sad. Now I look back on it, and the other person was feeling just immense sadness, and I was picking up on it. I would leave, come home, and just be wah, wah, and not realize it. Okay. What else? So while this can be a very powerful gift, as you can see, it can also be left unchecked and unbalanced. What's the right word? I was going to say detrimental. And it can be detrimental to us if we don't recognize it. If we don't recognize what I just stated. I was taking home other people's stuff. I was taking it on as my own. I wasn't aware of it. And I also gave an example of me, maybe I didn't, projecting. So I would feel somebody else being sad, And I'd be like, ooh, I need to make this person feel happier. And I would just rainbow vomit all over their bad day and think I was doing a good thing. Sometimes I was, but I'm sharing this from different angles, right? Taking it on other people's stuff. First, I didn't realize it. And I didn't even realize it when I was naturally wanting to help another person. I would just be like, I need to help that person. They need to feel better, right? And I probably did this my whole life. Not recognizing it. So I could go into so many levels and layers, which I may do later on. Like, well, part of that was triggering aspects in me that I needed to balance out, that were showing up for me as a mirrored reflection so that I can integrate those feelings and emotions. That's a whole other video. I just want to talk about the empathic part of it. So it became, I became really sick. And when I became really sick, I couldn't be around people who were also not dealing with their own energies. And I didn't know why at first. And then all of a sudden I heard the word empath. So it can be valuable sometimes to recognize that that's what we are, or that's an aspect of us. And for me, I used it as a tool of empowerment to then label myself as that, to then categorize, oh, this is why this is happening to me. Now, I just said something important though. This is why this is happening to me. Why I'm feeling sick all the time. Why I'm feeling emotional when I shouldn't be. Because ultimately now I see it as nothing is happening to me. I am allowing it to be part of my energy field, and I'll get to that in just a moment. But recognizing it, I recognized it. I attached the label to my consciousness, being, whatever we want to call it, and I became the empath. I embraced it, which was important for my journey, because as I embraced being an empath, I then realized at that layer of awakening, and this is a layer of awakening to being an empath, because there's layers of awakening to everything. I realized I was that, and then I thought, well, okay, I can feel this, so I can utilize this as a tool to help others. So when people were feeling bad, I would recognize it, and I would feel like I wanted to take it from them. I would take it on, and then I would just not feel great. But it was okay, because that was part of my journey, and that's what I was there to do. Because that was a label and a belief that I believed I needed to do because I was an empath. And that for me was an important awakening layer, because I made myself sicker. I would become more sick and go through many more symptoms and downtime, because then I had to process all of that gunk of somebody else's that I was taking on. And what happens when we do that is we draw more of that into our field, because we become like a, right? Oh, I'll take it from you. Don't worry about it. You feel bad. Let me handle that for you. And that can become a martyr. It can turn into something else. So the empath can be an umbrella that we exist under when we decide to relate to that specifically. And I'm going to go a little deeper, because ultimately, guys, from a higher dimensional perspective, we are all empaths. We all have the ability and capability to be empathic. Now, I know some of us would argue and say, I know somebody that has no empathy whatsoever. That's a completely different ball of wax, and that's not what I'm referring to. From my perspective, some of us are more sensitive than others. Some of us are more aware than others. Some of us have seen that we are an empath and have decided to turn it off. Some people don't even realize they have that ability within them. And some people choose to ignore it entirely. So there's layers of that as well. And that's not where I'm going with this particular video, but that's important to recognize. So from a higher perspective, we all have this ability. And part of what we do as light workers is to bring that out in others from a very linear perspective, right? Recognize that we can feel things that we didn't know we could feel. can be a very valuable gift for us to navigate through our life. And so I'll get to that in just a moment, because some people are struggling with that, going, why am I an empath? Why did I choose that? So let me go back just for a moment and remind everybody that we are all empaths. I'm talking about what I decided to do was to follow that label and jump into that wholeheartedly. And that became me, who I was, who I am. From this perspective at a previous stage of my development. So I'll get to that in just a moment. By the way, it's not that I'm not an empath anymore. It's just that at this stage of my awareness, I am finding ways to expand into more. I'm not only an empath. So I'll talk about that in just a moment, because sometimes by us labeling ourselves as that, we limit ourselves to just that experience. We also can use it as an exit route, and I'll get to that in just a moment. So I had these moments, I was feeling overly sensitive and I was taking on other people's things. Then at the same time, I was projecting my rainbow vomit onto these other people who needed my help. We all have done this if we love other people. It's just part of, many of us have, I won't say all of us. And then my guidance team was like, whoa, okay, glad you experienced that. My guidance team is my higher self, my entourage, right? So then I was like, why am I doing this? I'm not feeling good about this. I felt good every time I made somebody else happy. And that's a key word. I made somebody else happy. And I felt better because I was helping somebody else release some of their drama, trauma, whatever it might be, which helped make them feel better in the moment. But making somebody do something in either way is not necessarily balance and stability. And it might be fine in that moment, but that can essentially, what that's doing is that's projecting my will of what I feel they should be doing onto them. So I feel that they want to be happier. I'm then saying, I'm going to make you happier. And not everybody does this. I'm just sharing what I did. I did this on my journey, unknowingly, that I was stepping on somebody else's process, thinking I was doing the right thing. And in doing that, I was actually making myself sick as well, sicker than I already was. And I'd have to go through long bouts of cleansing and purifying because I, in that moment, agreed to take on their stuff, which doesn't take away from them. It actually doesn't. It might help them in the moment, but they still have to work through that stuff. It's not like I'm taking away their karma or their resolution or their journey. I'm stepping on it, but that doesn't change the fact that they still need to work through it in order to experience something. So it's almost like it's a temporary Band-Aid. And sometimes that temporary Band-Aid is awesome. And it's good to have that sometimes. I've received that from others as well, and I'm very grateful that I did. But my guides are like, you can't be doing this all the time. It's not healthy. It's not a healthy boundary. It's not a healthy relationship with yourself. And it's stepping on their journey, because me projecting rainbows on them is not necessarily what they need in order to process the emotions that they're experiencing. They might need to process that grief, for example. And while I'm saying, Care Bears care, and I'm sending rainbows and love, and that's okay. I'm talking about two different variations. There is a variation of just being the rainbow and love. And then there's a variation of projecting it at somebody so that they change their frequency. That's my intention, is to change their frequency. There's a difference in that. One is holding space so that they can tap into it if they choose to, which is inevitable. If we're in somebody else's space, they're going to feel, as an empath, what we're feeling. So if we're feeling love and light and we're holding space of neutrality, they're going to be able to express themselves and feel in a neutral space. They might be feeling, as we're projecting at them rainbows, I need to get better because that person's in a good mood and I don't want to ruin their good mood. You see, that's like a totally different dynamic. And that basically puts that feeling that they were in the process of maybe integrating into a box, and they're still going to have to open it up later. And boundaries and all that's a whole other conversation. So that's the process of empaths, is not taking on other people's stuff. So part of this is about responsibility, and it is about our ability to respond to the energy that we're feeling in our environment, yet not make it our responsibility to fix it. Which is really challenging sometimes if we resonate with being a light worker. And by the way, we can take any of these labels and attach it to ourselves and limit ourselves with it. However, it can also be useful as expansion. I really felt the expansion of being an empath. As I resonated with that word, I took on that responsibility as an empath, which temporarily was important for me as a learning experience to recognize what I'm sharing with you. Because it isn't my responsibility to take on other people's emotions. It's my responsibility to allow others to be themselves, to express. And I don't say like that's my responsibility. It's my responsibility to hold my space so that they can find their own journey. Then I'm able to bring to the table what my own gifts are. That's a whole other video. So, the layer. So my guidance team, whatever we want to label it as I labeled myself as a light worker and a healer, that's an empath, was like, yeah, but you're feeling all of this. That doesn't mean you have to take it on. And there's a lot of things, I'll do a video maybe down the road about how not to take on other people's stuff and to recognize when we are. But I want to talk about the stages of this. So I recognized that. And the next stage was, okay, now that I feel everybody's emotions, right? And I'm recognizing that I'm an empath, and I'm recognizing that that's why I'm getting sick. It was also not getting stuck on blaming or labeling me getting sick because I'm an empath. Because yes, that was true on one layer. But the other truth was that I wasn't integrating my own journey. So what would happen is I would get triggered by somebody else going through what they were going through. I would take on that as my stuff, but I wouldn't be able to recognize, because I was blaming all of this on taking on other people's stuff. I was invited to recognize, hey, by the way, that was also for you. So they triggered you because they were angry and you had some anger. This was triggered. And now you're feeling it come up because it's something that needs to be integrated in your own journey. So it's recognizing that it's not always other people's stuff. So sometimes we get sucked into, that's the exit route or bypass route of saying, well, I'm an empath, so I'm taking on everybody else's stuff, so it's not mine. So there's the martyr, right? Of like, oh, it's all mine and I need to help people. And then there's the, oh, I'm taking all of this on so I can't handle being in public places. Which sometimes that stuff that we're feeling is our own stuff being triggered, activated, not always, but sometimes. And we're being invited to recognize that it's being triggered. We cannot recognize that it's being triggered within us if we are blaming the fact that we're an empath on the triggers. Well, I'm just feeling that because it's somebody else's stuff and I need to get out of the situation. I need to walk away. While that is true sometimes, and we need to walk away so that we can find our own neutrality, so that we can get into a space of not taking on somebody else's stuff or projecting our own stuff. It is also important to recognize that sometimes we are being activated or triggered by another person's emotions or the environment that we are picking up on to assist us in our own integration of energy that we have yet to acknowledge that is within our own field. And that I could go into different places if that makes sense. So if we're bypassing it by saying, basically using the empath as a shield, as to, well, I'm an empath, so I'm gonna feel everything. So that means I just need to shut down so I don't feel anything and kind of just do this over here. That's ignoring what being an empath does. And let me just back up for a moment, because many of us feel like being an empath means we have to help others, or being an empath means we have to go through this. It's like I'm an empath, so I'm always going to feel this way. And I'll get to that in just a moment. It becomes like this thing, this box that we put ourselves in sometimes, and we go, well, that means I'm just going to feel this forever, so I have to extract myself from that situation. Sometimes it's about us feeling that situation. So we can then ask ourselves, my favorite saying that my friend Kat brought up to me years ago was, who does this belong to? Does this belong to them, or does this belong to me? And sometimes just by asking that question in that moment, we might go, ooh, I think that's mine. And that invites us to feel empathy for ourselves and to recognize that this person, place, or thing is triggering us. And that can be a gift, because being an empath is a gift for us to navigate where it is we want to go, where we don't want to go, what's working for us and what isn't working for us. So that gives us the opportunity to say, okay, I'm aware. And now I choose to integrate this. And so we then can dissolve that, integrate it, move through that in that moment. So that person gifted us with that. We felt it, assumed it was theirs, but then recognized it was ours. And then vice versa, we might go, oh, that belongs to them. So thank you for showing that to me, but I choose not to play in that field. And then we make the choice to set up that boundary so that we don't allow their little entities of doubt or fear or envy or anger or whatever it might be to jump onto us. It might be trying to happen, and we might recognize that that's an energy, and we're like, nope, no thank you. Thank you, but no thank you. I'm out. And that's when we might need to extract ourselves from the situation. But what we just did there was we acknowledged, we didn't just run away from it. We didn't spiritually bypass it. We didn't go and take our escape route and use being an empath as a reason as to why we couldn't see what it was that was showing up as a gift for us. And this does take balance. It does take harmonization, and I'll get to that. I might run out of time on this video, so I'll probably do a 2-part video. So we had the opportunity to see if it was somebody else's stuff or if it was our own. And sometimes we have a tendency to think that if it's showing up for us, it is ours. And I don't feel that that's always true from my own perspective. It can be very true. Other times it's just for us to recognize that we've already worked through that. That might have been ours at one time, but now we're giving the opportunity to see how far we've come. Sometimes it shows up for us and we go, ooh, that used to be mine, but I'm not going to take that back. That's return to sender. That no longer fits in my world, and it's okay to be that way. So I talked a little bit about martyr, talked a little bit about projecting. So now we're in that space of, all right, we've acknowledged that these are all feelings that we're experiencing. We've acknowledged that that's theirs or that's ours. What if we're in that place of, and I might do this in the second part, where we just are like, can't handle it yet. That'll be another video. So if you're in that space, what I just talked about are stages that we'll go through. I'll probably do another video on when you're in that place of, and what's going on. So this is more for those who are in that space of, okay, I am aware. I would also invite those to recognize that a lot of the labels that we've given ourselves as, I am an empath, I am a healer, I am a light worker, I am a starseed, I am an indigo, I am crystal, whatever it might be. Those are all beautiful words to describe what we resonate with. But what I would like to share is with the word empath and with the word, some of those can be limiting, because we may be an indigo, but we also may be crystal, we also may be rainbow, we also may be Blu-ray. And ultimately, all of that can limit us on our journey. It can give us that expansion that we need in the moment, because we might go, wow, what is that? And you might feel drawn into that world to explore it, to trigger and activate and integrate certain memories of being that. But the biggest message I'm getting is we're in a completely different world of manifestation. So we're being invited to step out and beyond of being just that, including an empath. Because being an empath is only one aspect. How then do we use that with all of our other skills and abilities? Because feeling other people's emotions, and this is just one layer of being an empath, is really a skill and a gift that we can all utilize to help us not only help one another and expand, but help us on our own journey, our own awareness. So I want to talk because I know that there's people out there going, well, we're an empath so that we can help each other. And yes, the best way that we can assist one another is by holding our own space. So I'm going to get into that balance. So once we're there, getting out of projecting, getting out of pulling on somebody else's energy, getting out of taking it on ourselves, we come into that space of just I am presence. So it's being in a space of heart coherence, that we are the rainbow. And everybody else is a rainbow too, as Bob Marley would say, but I think it's Bob Marley. So what would happen is those aspects of those other beings, when we stay in that space of heart coherence, balance, and neutrality, are able to be integrated easier for some people when you're sharing a field together. And again, I encourage everybody to go on heartmath.org and look up HeartMath. Look up some of the pictures that they show. It's very science-based. It shows that we all share and exchange information in our fields. So rather than projecting or pulling from somebody else's to help balance it out, hold our own balance, and then that other person will feel. They will naturally either raise their frequency by just being in a space of, for some reason, I just feel balance. There's no pressure for them to change their frequency to match yours or to get away from you because you're projecting too much or trying to help them too much. Although some people may naturally not feel ready to be around neutrality, and that's okay. So part of being an empath is being okay. And let me rephrase that. Part of being an empath is recognizing that everybody else is an empath too. So that comes into sovereignty. And in our own sovereignty, we're not pushing our will on somebody else's sovereignty. And recognizing that they may not realize that they've got that ability as well. So whatever space we're holding is going to be felt in their field, whether they choose to recognize it, whether they choose to acknowledge it, is not our responsibility. Our responsibility, our ability to respond, is neutrality and balance. Does that make sense? So in doing that, we are healing others, if we want to say it that way.